Hey, how's it going, everybody? So, I just thought I'd do another short video about Linux market share. So, it looks like the Linux market share has gone up again. It's been a little while since I did my last video. On that last video, I think it was, it raised maybe a point or two, a tenth of a point or two. And then the time before that, I did the other video before that, it raised pretty dramatically. Well, I guess it depends on your measurement of dramatic, but it seemed dramatic to me because when the lockdowns started happening for everybody, it seemed like Linux jumped up. Now, I don't know if that was the reason for it, or people were just able to be at home and use whatever devices they wanted for work, or maybe Linux just got more popular. I'm not really sure. But anyway, it looks like that trend is continuing. So right here we have the Steam hardware and software survey. So this doesn't specifically talk about all metrics as a whole, but this is a pretty good indicator for at least normal gamers, people who are, maybe some of them are more technical. But it's not like people who are server operators, like server technicians in the IT industry or anything like that. This is pretty much people who are using desktop Linux. Now, I know there's a lot of people who are using desktop Linux that don't care about Steam, don't use Steam, but as a share of the market in the Steam marketplace, I think it's important. And if we look in here, we can see, let me increase the size of this here. Let's just go over some of the findings. So the Linux version looks like that's the most popular and has had a 3.55% increase since the last time we had these surveys, and that's pretty good. Now I know that there's not a lot of other distributions that are newbie friendly, maybe. There's Mint, there's possibly SteamOS, although I think SteamOS has some, or at least the Debian version, maybe it's not as up to date, but I could be wrong about that. What else? There's Solus. I think they pretty newbie friendly. I've never personally used Solus, but I do like the project. I was planning on using it once they switch over to Qt, although I don't know if that's happened already yet. Last time I checked it hadn't happened yet. But yeah, so that's pretty cool. I mean, that's what I'm using, KDE Neon, and I think its base is on 2004 now. So I mean, I think that's pretty normal. There's going to see a lot of change, and it's most likely going to be the most popular, just because. Yeah, it was the first Linux desktop that was for human beings, what they said, I think. So, yeah, that makes sense. And then system RAM, it looks like it's 16 gigabytes, which just so happens that's what I have in my computer. But I just went out and picked up a 32 gigabyte pack that I'm going to be installing here pretty soon. It's not really something to write home about or write a video, but yeah. Looks like that's actually a change too, but 16 gigabytes is a pretty good amount. If you have 16 gigabytes, unless you're running virtual machines or something like that, you're going to be fine, especially in games and your operating system. Even if you have all the features turned on for, something like Plasma or GNOME or some kind of extra compiz effects or whatever, 16 is still going to be fine. And I mean, I've had 16 with multiple IDEs running, and Google Chrome or Brave, and then Firefox, with each one of the browsers having 20 tabs, and 16 is still fine. So yeah, 16 is really good. I just picked up the 32 gigabyte sticks because I do want to run some virtual machines, some QEMU machines or KVM for some Hackintosh stuff and some other things like that. So here we also have the processor vendors. We have Genuine Intel, looks like it's the most popular, but then we also have AMD that's jumping up a little bit, almost an entire percentage point with a 0.78%. So that's pretty good. The physical CPUs seems to be about 4 CPUs. Now, on my machine, I have a Ryzen Threadripper. At the time when I got it, it was very expensive, so I understand 4 is pretty good, and for gaming, that's going to be plenty. I can't imagine any games besides, you know, maybe some other CPU. I mean, yeah, I can't imagine you'd ever need more than that for the games right now. Maybe with VR, maybe in streaming and doing other things at the same time, that's going to be a different story. But it does, one positive thing I think is pretty cool. It looks like for Linux anyway, the most popular video card is the AMD RX 480. Now, I had the 580. I previously did a review about it. And on Linux, AMD is just so buttery smooth. Now, that's not to say that, you know, NVIDIA can't be, because actually on the 450 driver that just recently came out, it really solved a lot of the problems that I was having in KDE. And I'm recording this video now on a 1070 in Plasma, and not getting nearly as many kind of like graphical artifacts and things like that I was getting before, where AMD everything just worked because it's open source. You know, the developers that are working on any of these various desktop environments, they have access to it. It's just easier to understand. The graphics, you know, drivers, if there's a bugs, any old random person can go in and fix it. So yeah, I think AMD is better in that regard. Obviously, you know, frames per second isn't always going to be in AMD's favor, but as far as smoothness and things like that, yeah. But I'll just quickly go through this other stuff. It looks like most everybody's got a microphone. Looks like a lot of people are still on 1080p. I've already made the switch to 4K now. And I'm guessing that's going to start to become a little bit more normal as, you know, the graphics cards, all the graphics cards, even AMD graphics cards, start to move up in power. Now, now we have the 3000 series, and I'm thinking that, you know, the 3060, it's not out yet. We don't have any benchmarks, but I'm just like speculating. 3060, 3070 can probably pretty easily run games at 4K. So that's going to be a definite possibility. As for the language, it looks like the most popular language for Linux is going to be English, which makes sense, I guess, because, you know, it's an English company. But still, I'm sure there's other people who, you know, speak Russian or Spanish or, you know, various other languages. And then it looks like they have some hard drive statistics for us, and it looks like hard drive total space is 250 gigs. That's kind of surprising to me because, I mean, SSDs and NVMe drives for a terabyte drive now is only $100. So that's kind of surprising, actually. But, you know, maybe people are running a little bit older rigs when they're on Linux, because that's usually what I think a lot of people that get into Linux is, well, sometimes, not always, but they have some crappy laptop, they're low on funds. I mean, I've done it before when I was in college, and they repair a laptop, they throw Linux on it instead of, you know, buying a Windows license, and they find out, hey, my system works a lot better with Linux. That's awesome. So then they just keep going with that thread. And yeah, that might be the reason, or, you know, maybe it's just their main drive is just a little bit smaller, but they use an SSD, but then they have a larger hard drive. So yeah, we can go look at some of the other statistics. What is it like on the Windows side of things, or we can look at it combined. So combined, let's actually look at the Windows side of things just to have a comparison. Now they have a lot of extra stuff in here, but the video card looks like a 1060 on Windows. and that seems to be dropping slightly. And looks like for the most part everything else is going to be the same on Windows, although people on Windows do have larger hard drives, which may go along with that thing that I was saying, that people on Linux just they convert old stuff and they find out Linux works better and they go with it. Well, if the people who had the nicer hardware actually just jumped over and used Linux, they'd also find out that in most cases their hardware is going to run better in most use cases. Now, with some games, obviously there are instances when we have like 5 or 10 frame differences between games, and that can usually fall in line with in favor of Windows, where they'll win that one. But I mean, even with Proton or Wine, 5 or 10 frames with the emulation layer reverse engineered, that's pretty fantastic if you ask me. But now on native games, I think that's a different story. Sometimes Linux actually does a little bit better, sometimes not. So, yeah. But yeah, as you can see, this is looking looking pretty much the same. The only difference is it looks like NVIDIA is a bit more popular, which kind of makes sense because AMD is the open source driver. So we'll look at these combined. I don't think we're going to get any extra information from this. Yeah, we're not going to learn anything extra from that. But yeah, I was just reading this on the Phoronix website, and Phoronix talks about back in August, the Valve reported 0.89 market share for Linux compared to July at 0.86. So September jumped up by 0.05 to 0.94. So that's kind of what I was talking about before. That's a pretty big jump, a 0.05% jump to using Linux. Now, I've jumped back and forth to Windows just because I like to get an idea for why, how things are running in different scenarios. And sometimes I just have to use it for, Visual Studio stuff for projects and things like that. But yeah, I still do really believe that Linux is just a better system, and it's really nice to see something like this. So yeah, I'm just going to keep on reporting on this stuff as I see it. But you guys take care. Bye.